what's the support that you set up for yourself? I think that's really challenging. Do you have the peers to talk to? Do you have coaches? I'm a huge fan of coaches and mentors. And I'm a fan of therapy too, because it is, when you're stretching yourself, you do have to, there's a reason you were in a box for so long, and in a certain place. It was comfortable, right? And there's an identity there. And there's an identity either from your family, from society.
Welcome everyone to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your host and founder and CEO of Guide to HR. And I'm excited to have Theresia on the call today. We're going to be talking about her experience as a founder and also about leadership. So Theresia, tell us a little bit about yourself and welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm the owner of two companies. One is a service company that's called Intag Hire, and that's a human resource and recruiting firm that's done on an hourly model. And then the other company is Tag for HR, and that's a membership platform for HR professionals of SMBs. And
Awesome.
love to talk all things about, growing companies. That's my favorite space.
So you got two you're doing right now.
Right.
So tell us just a little bit about what you're experiencing as a founder and co-founder, some lessons learned and just some of the things that you're dealing with right now that probably other founders are finding that they're in the same space.
Yes. When I started my first company about 7 years ago, I was in a situation where my kids were still at home, they were middle school, about going into high school. And so I had to be really conscientious about not, putting too much money into the company, not getting any money for myself, that balancing act. I had to bootstrap everything. So I had to do contracts on the side that, I was just working. And then I had to build this formula for this business that was a little unique and trying to sell it to see if it would be sticky out there. And it did that kind of slow growth instead of rushing it. Which is why, here we are 7 years later. It took a while. The last 3 years have been, the best. But part of what was really hard for me with growing a business was going from that mode of being that sole person who is in it every day, day to day, and then letting go of the reins and figuring out where to bring in certain expertise so that I could start to expand. And that was so hard to give up that control, because it was like, oh, I know how to do this really well. How am I going to let somebody else, they're not going to be good enough. No one's going to be as good as what I'm going to do or what I want to do. And then I came across a saying that somebody told me about, typically most founders operate at about 120% to 150%. So what we think people should be doing for us is that expectation of that 120 to 150%. But if we can pull that back a little bit and just say, are they doing 80% of what I want? Because that 80% is everybody else's 100%.
Yeah.
And for me, like, that was a huge shift in my thinking that helped me start to let go a little bit and try out some part-time people. I started with interns initially. I had contractors that I tapped into, and we actually built our business on part-time workers that were stay-at-home moms, because they had such deep skills, but they did not have the ability to work full time, and they need a flexible environment. And so recruiting is just such a great, in HR is a great opportunity to be part-time. And that helped to do, but the biggest impact, I think, for scaling was getting a part-time EA and a part-time ops person. Those two, and I didn't even think the ops mindset, when I started my business, that would be something, that you have until you're like, 30 people, 50 people big. I was like, no, it's too early. But as soon as I did, the framework for the business was established. And it's like, whether we had, 5 clients or whether we had 40 clients, we were prepared we could expand and contract that way. It made a big, big difference. And they were all part-time, so they were affordable.
Yeah, it is really, I just pulled the trigger on getting a VA virtual assistant, and it's been, such a godsend to give me space to breathe and think about the business from a different perspective and to support my clients too at the same time. So, yeah. And it's hard because, like, I remember that moment of like, oh, I probably need one, but I don't know what they'll work on. I'll wait. And then I was like, what am I doing? Like, even if I just have them work on this one thing, that would be such a weight off my shoulder. And now now they've done that, they've got to know my business, they're getting to know how I work, and they're starting to add more value that I didn't even dream of.
Right.
So yeah, it is. It's very challenging. And I don't even have the mindset that I could do it all. It was more of like, I don't know what I could give them. I
Yes.
think it's like you said, I don't know what I could give them that the product that they produce would be the quality that I would need and want and
Right.
expect of myself. Might as well just do it myself. But the reality is that if you spend some time coaching them, training them, and giving them the tools and the mindset and where you're wanting to go, that time actually has so much ROI, because now you're getting
Right.
so much more time on the
Yes.
back end. It's just
Yeah.
that moment of like giving that time up is
Mhm.
going to help you so much more on that. It's like
But it's
any
so
hiring
hard.
manager. It's so
Yes.
hard. Any hiring manager is like, I need you to interview these people. I need you to give the job description, your
Right.
recruiting plan, and I need you to
Right.
interview. Oh, by the way, when you hire the person, you need to spend time onboarding them. Oh my gosh, it's so much more time. But as soon as you do all of that, the ROI on the back end, you're going to be able to
Yes.
have so much more freedom to do what you need to do as a manager, because now you're not having to do that role and your role.
Right. Did you do the
Yeah.
list? Did you do the list of like start tracking like every little thing that you were doing or had to do? And there's a book that I can't remember the name of the book now that talked about doing that when you're trying to scale it, because I didn't even know what it was, honestly, like that I was doing or couldn't do, like I didn't even know where to separate that because I was just so
Yeah.
used to doing it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even communicate it sometimes, the things that needed to get done or how to do them. And I started making that list of tracking my time, like where am I spending my time or what's tugging at me the most? And then I looked at, okay, can I give that to somebody? Like, can I? And then it went further, like later. Now, when I have things, I had a mentor that told me it's not how it gets done, it's who does it.
Mm.
And so that's what I try to repeat in my head over and over again. When another thing comes up and I start to feel overwhelmed, I'm like, wait a minute, I got to pause, go slow to go fast, like take a
Yes.
moment and say, okay, is there somebody that I know that could do this on our team? Is there anybody that can help me with this? And then boom, like I go again. And the ROI, like you said, it's like whoop, you expand and you
Yep.
can do more and reach more with that process.
Yeah. I remember when I first started my business, trying to do everything right. And it was like, uh, I kept this motto in my head of like, is this how I should be spending my time? Is this how I should be? Like, I
Yes.
kind of got in the weeds because I'm also in HR, and
Mhm.
sometimes there's not a lot of creativity that comes along, and
Mhm.
depending on what you're working on in HR, certainly in policies and handbooks, there's not, right? I mean, you
Right.
can,
No.
but
Yeah.
not a lot. And so as I'm starting to, build my business and build the logos and the website and the social media, I started finding myself spending so much time down the rabbit hole of Adobe and graphics and
Yes.
playing around, and
Yes.
then I caught myself. I'm like, what am I? I'm enjoying my time, but is the
Mhm.
ROI? And am I actually going to
Yes.
be making any money by what I'm doing here? Probably not. Let's go find the experts, save money, save time, and get back on the focus of what I should be doing as the
Mhm.
founder and as the leader of the company.
Well, and to that
Yeah.
point, like I think that was the moment in time when I started to realize I started to look at what do I enjoy and what do I not enjoy? What do I get
Mm-hmm.
excited about? What do I love learning about? And and then I tried to this is what I say, stay in my lane. I tried to stay in my lane of those things that because before when I was trying to do a lot of it to kind of keep things cheap, and make sure that it was sustainable, um it I would get worn out more, not just because of all the things I had to do, but because there were things that were draining to me. And so then when I kind of focused on, okay, what are the things that I enjoy more? There's always have tos, but what are most of those
Yeah.
things I enjoy more? All of a sudden that capacity expanded again. And it was fascinating to me. It was almost like an experiment I kept doing because I was like, really? Like this doesn't make sense, I'm spending more money, I'm doing more things, like why is this working? Because
Yeah.
it's not the way I thought it would work.
Yeah. It goes back to your list. So you asked if I've ever done a list. I've done a list in
Mhm.
regards to what do I enjoy doing? What am I
Mhm.
doing? Basically, like writing down all that you do,
Right.
and then I highlighted what do I enjoy doing,
Mhm.
what I don't like doing, what I think in my role I should be doing,
Yeah.
and then looking at that and seeing what can I delegate. Right? I think
Mhm.
there's like again, I was really enjoying that creative moment,
Mhm.
well, okay, let me have a little bit of that because I
Right.
enjoyed it, but don't own it all
Right.
so that I can do what I need to do in my role.
Mhm.
And so it's like that kind of like combination of like, I could get 80 to 90% of the marketing collateral, social media, all that stuff over to my team,
Right.
keep a little bit into it just to have some fun with it,
Mhm.
to let my creative juices flow from that perspective. But it's not where I should be spending all of my time. And
Yeah.
making that list, like you said, it's like sometimes you don't even realize it. Like if you just started kind of making that list over your day for the
Mhm.
next week or two, I mean, don't make it a big deal, right? Like don't
Right.
make it be something that feels like a hard lift. That's not the concept here. It's like just
Right.
like, oh, I had to have, I was business developing. I had 3 intro calls, did the
Yeah.
podcast, put social media together, reached out to prior clients, like the things that
Mhm.
you're doing, then you realize, okay, yeah, a lot of that is maybe administrative. I could get
Mhm.
over to my VA. A lot of that is things that would be great for other people to learn that are in my part-time or full-time
Right.
bench, right? And then, start sharing the burden. Because
Mhm.
you're right, CEOs and founders, we do run 120 to
Yes.
150, maybe 200% of the
Right.
time. And I think you and I both have dealt with a lot of founders who have this mindset that everyone should be working that way. And it's like,
Right.
no, this is your
Mhm.
baby,
Right.
and people do
Mhm.
match your value and do believe in what you're trying to accomplish and will work hard for that, but they
Right.
won't work at the 200% hard.
Well, then
They'll
you
work
have
at the
burnout.
80 to 100, maybe
Yeah.
120. You might be able to get a couple people at
Yeah.
120. But
Yeah.
yeah, you get the burnout for sure,
Mhm.
because co-founders or founders and co-founders see us, we kind of thrive on it.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's our baby. So like,
Right.
I'm never going to let my baby go hungry.
Right.
Yeah. So like a babysitter might be willing to let the baby go hungry for 30
Mhm.
minutes while they finish their episode of whatever
Right.
they're
Right.
watching, right? And
Yes.
then they'll feed the baby. Like, so yeah. So I think that's a hard mindset to get people,
Mhm.
founders, to really understand. So kudos to you
Yeah.
for
Well,
recognizing that.
it
And
wasn't easy.
no, no, certainly. And it's
I
probably something you still battle in your
Oh,
head,
yes. Every
right?
day.
Yeah. I mean, as managers, it's hard to delegate outward. And then now you're talking
Yes.
about this as your baby. You founded this business.
Right.
So yeah, totally. I love that. So tell me a little bit more about any other like hurdles that you've learned from that, man, if everyone listening could learn from this and never have to experience again, you feel like your job is done.
Oh, I mean, that was one of the main things was that shift
That
in
was a big
mindset.
one.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that that's the theme actually when you're a well, maybe this isn't true for a lot of people, but I feel or for some, but I feel like it is for a lot. Owning a business, running a business is 80% a mental game with yourself. There
Mhm.
and that's what I constantly struggle with. Like there is the challenge of oh, I can't do this when you're having a bad day. I mean, of course, there's like, times where you're losing your cool, you're getting upset, tears, whatever. There's good days and bad days. That's the reality. But in those bad days, try not to fall into those old traps, the mental traps of, oh, I wasn't cut out for this. Oh, I'm not as skilled as I thought I was. I love this, but I guess it's not me. I'm not good enough. All those imposter kinds of things that come up that we hear, we hear a lot of talk around imposter syndrome, but it's almost deeper than that though. Like I've discovered for myself anyway, that it's a lot of really going to the root of where are those things coming from? Where are those, messages coming from? And are they true? And how to build up that support for myself in my life across the board because it's so isolating. It is so isolating being a
Mhm.
founder and a CEO and you don't wanna be that vulnerable or some people are better at it than others, but, you get concerned, like, I have to be stoic. I have to, make people feel like there's, it's a positive environment and that everything's going well, but you're having a bad day, you know? So,
Yeah,
like
we're all human.
right, we're all human, and how do you, like, just, kinda go behind closed doors, and what's the support that you set up for yourself? I think that's really challenging. Do you have the peers to talk to? Do you have coaches? I'm a huge fan of coaches and mentors, and I'm a fan
Mhm.
of therapy too, because it is when you're stretching yourself, you do have to there's a reason you were in a box for so long. and in a certain
Comfortable.
place. It was comfortable, right? And there's an
Mhm.
identity there. And there's an identity either from your family, from society, just what you think you're supposed to do. And especially as a female too, there's that identity of other things of your role and what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do, and you be trying to be super mom or super woman. And so then that I think was all those tools were really helpful to help me bounce out of that, getting stuck in those mindsets and stretch to the next phase or the next level. But it's always stretching. Like it's always what's next? What's the next thing to do? Because any entrepreneur is like, oh, let's go to the next thing. Let's take it
Yeah.
further. Let's see how far we can go.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that is what I think core definition, part of the definition of an entrepreneur is,
Yeah.
right? Pushing the limits and doing something different. And,
Yes.
that gets you out of your comfort zone and puts you
Mhm.
in hard places. Like
Right.
you're trying to sell something that no one ever has done. You're trying to build something that no one's ever
Right.
done. And that means it's hard.
It's
It's not like you
hard.
can just go
It's
and follow
scary.
Walt Disney and make
Right.
another Disneyland, right?
Right. No, no. It may means you kind of lose a bunch of stuff for a while, financially, or gain a bunch. You're like, it's a risky environment, but we love it. It's so
Yeah.
hard to do anything else once you figure out that's what you love.
Yeah, if that's the personality you have and
Mhm.
and what you enjoy and thrive on, then it's hard to go back to marching orders for someone
Right.
else.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I look at people that work for me now and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I appreciate them so much and what they can do and the way that they're effective and what they produce, because I'm like, I don't know that I can do that again. Like I produce a lot in my world, but to your point, like going back to having a boss, is it's just it's not I can do it if I have to, but it's not where my heart is.
Well, and I think that goes back to the risk factor, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we as founders have an appetite for the risk.
Mhm.
And, maybe also, I hope all founders have a plan B in their
Yes.
mind, right?
Yes.
Because we all have to eat and keep a roof over our head. And
Right.
hopefully that's not the plan B is not to go back to mommy and daddy
Right.
situation, right? But
But,
some scenarios
you
might
know,
be, but, at this point in
plan
time,
C.
that's not going to work for me since they're under my roof, but,
Yes.
yeah, so I think it's like, but it's reward, comes risk,
Yeah.
with risk comes reward, right?
Yes.
And so, sometimes it doesn't come with reward, but the times that it does, you're just like, and this is why I'm doing
Mhm.
it this way. And I know a lot of people that just look at founders and go, wow, I could never do that. They just don't have
Mhm.
that same risk tolerance. They might have a good thought process, a
Yes.
good idea, but the risk isn't there, that tolerance to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Well, this is fun. I've really enjoyed learning about it. And I think you're right. Like wrapping up a little bit here, recapping, it is
Mhm.
really important to recognize that, I think the biggest thing here, takeaway is if you haven't created a list of what you're working on
Mhm.
and evaluating the things that you're doing and how those can be outsourced to vendors, to fractionals, to
Yes.
interims, to team members you already have,
Yes.
it's time to do that list because I think
Absolutely.
you'd be really surprised on, oh, gosh, 20% of that is admin work I should not be
Mhm.
doing.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Teresa, this was great. Any last comments, thoughts, ideas, tips, tricks that you've learned
Yeah.
that you want to share out to the world?
Yes, I wanted to mention one last thing about that I'm noticing over companies, leadership is changing a little bit. And, as we kind of are leaving 2023 into 2024, there's a shift happening where people are needing or wanting, desiring more flexibility, more
Mm,
connection, and it's requiring a different demand on leaders than what it used to. Leadership is no longer the ABC playbook that we used to have. It's very different, and you have to be a lot more kind of agile as a leader to pivot. Companies have to pivot faster because of technology moving so fast and influencing the markets. The markets are constantly, we're seeing up and down right now. So leadership has to really create different kinds of relationships, I think, and be able to develop those relationships better to keep people engaged on all these changes and shifting the company so it survives.
yeah, that is very true. I agree with that. I mean, I always say one of the good things, not that there were that many, but one of the good things that came out of the pandemic situation was the shift from manager the employees all having to figure out how to manage their manager, right?
Right.
To now managers are having to figure out how to manage and support each individual under their team. And I think
Yes.
that that has just caused, it's obviously caused a lot of, like, oh my gosh, craziness, right? But it's
Yeah,
also like, talk about putting the human back into your
exactly.
organization, because now you're not treating this person as a number or a robot under your team. You're actually
Right.
treating them like the human being that they are. And none of us can come to work and
Hmm.
be able to shut off our personal situation,
Right.
right? We all come with everything. I mean, you come into a relationship with baggage, it's no different with the
Right.
relationship with your employer.
And life happens, and that's the reality. I think everyone's starting to realize, like, life happens, and if we don't make room for those bumps and things that are just going to happen in our lifetime, losses and grief and illnesses, all of that, it makes it almost impossible. And I think that's what we've learned, and now we're in a more aware scenario, and yeah, we're becoming, I think, more human in the workplace, and it's important.
Yeah. So more to come in our 2024 year about leadership and being agile and really being that one-to-one personal relationship building.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Teresa. It was great having you on the call. And thank you everyone
Thank
for listening.
you.
Hope you have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks so much.